Good afternoon, friends. It's Valerie Ling here. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I these days predominantly work in the space of burnout resilience and leadership. And I wondered whether those of us who work highly irregular hours and in patterns that are not the norm, actually find ourselves needing to pace up and pace down in a way that only you can understand, but sometimes that just runs you like around the clock and you're not quite sure why you're feeling the way that you do. I've certainly found that having come back to work in February, um, some of the things, some of the patterns that I actually had in place for 24 months ago when I had a lot, I wasn't quite on a clinical sabbatical and things like that. I've been experimenting with this week, thinking that, oh, well, okay, I'm not doing, the solid work at the clinic. Some of the management and the supervision spaces in the practice have actually been taken over by other people. And so there are these diary spaces now that I can just go and fill up. What I've forgotten is that my role has changed. So, though I'm not currently at this point in time seeing individual clients, I'm now seeing groups. So, an hour appointment can actually comprise of a few people. I've also taken back the public activities that I'm a part of. So, I would have spoken to literally hundreds of people in just the span of a few weeks. And they predominantly, well, all strangers, new people. And at the same time, when you're having public engagements, you're also regulating yourself all the time. You have to make sure that, because in this day and age, things are being recorded, you have to ensure that what you're saying doesn't offend anybody. And as a psychologist, you can never switch off that radar for yourself, that you're making sure that you're not triggering people. Are people safe? When you're just seeing one person at one time and someone that you know clinically well, that just takes one batch of resources. But when you're seeing hundreds of people all the time, that is actually really a different energy source. Plus, there are some of us that just work irregular hours. Most of the time, you will have me up at 5:30 or 6, because if there's a lot of things for me to get through, I actually find that that is the best time of work for me. And even though emails only get to you at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., that's because I schedule them, because I don't want to create a culture in my practice that they believe they have to check my emails, first thing like 7 o'clock when they wake up. So there's very often times I've already been up from 5:30 to 6 and cleared a whole bunch of emails. And very often, if I've got evening webinars and things like that, I'm actually working some highly irregular hours. And depending on what the week is like, I could also put a chunk of work in on Saturday and Sunday. And I think sometimes when you're working these sorts of irregular hours, it suits some of us, right? The reason why I consult and coach and lead and do the things that I do is also because the way that I work and my sort of energy tank runs on inspiration and capacity, intuition, and I work best in deep focus. So I'm not going to really work very well in a 9 to 5 format. I probably did a few years ago, but well, even decades ago, because my job was consisted of a bunch of administrative things, sometimes seeing individual clients whom I would know quite well, because the type of therapy that I do and the type of therapy that I lead in the practice, they tend to be very personalized, and we take on clients and we see them through for the long haul. There's not a lot of turnover and change in our client load. And so that sort of structure of doing your 9 to 5s works, because most of the time you do your admin in the morning and you see your clients, or vice versa. But right now, you might be, for example, someone who's a shift worker. You could be a business owner, or you could be someone who freelances, or maybe you're in retail, or maybe you're in the bakery industry. They also have highly irregular hours. And you're going to feel, I wonder whether you do feel this way, that when everybody is being productive and working and you're actually clocking off, it feels counterintuitive, and the temptation is therefore to to fill those spaces up. What I'm finding, having come back and forgetting a lot of why my diary is made up the way that it is, that recovery time is missed. So if you have a lot of back-to-back things, and I often say in my work with clients too, that if you have really high energy draining activities back to back, and also not just hour but day, like the days back to back, you will be really drained because you just have no recovery time. You remember how I said in regular work days, you sit down, you do your admin things, they're quite routine. So in the world of work resourcing, there are going to be chunks that are fairly automated or automatic in your brain, that you're not doing a lot of thinking, and there's going to be work where it's quite a lot of cognitive resources required. So in a situation like where I'm sharing with what I do, everything, every live I write, every blog I write, every seminar that we do, they're all high cognitive activities and high emotional activities as well, because the material is new, and so you're not relying on anything that's pre-processed. The brain is constantly processing. So I just wanted to give the heads up for anybody that might be feeling like, oh, I'm not quite sure why I'm like running out of juice, like everybody else seems to be okay. Particularly, where I live in New South Wales, a lot of our restrictions for COVID is coming off at the end of the week, and there's like a rhythm now of just going bang on to those hours where we're commuting and we're traveling. But if you are in a situation where you work irregular hours, you might even be a parent of a young child, that you're up and down in irregular hours, because it really just depends on the rhythms of your kids. Just be aware that you will need different switch off and recovery patterns, and it's probably going to be highly individualistic, and it is actually worth figuring out for yourself when those recovery and recharge times are really important, so that you don't carry the tiredness and the burnout signals into your next day, week after week. All right, take care.